Ali, not sure if you got her note. She might be running a few minutes late.
Oh, is that what she said? All right.
Yeah,
Let me ask the professor if I can go. Hold on one second.
All right, I think she's gonna come on in a second. She's usually in class, and sometimes she gets out of class just a few minutes late. But let me just pull up my format. Teresa, going once, going twice. All right, I'm gonna pull up my format.
Okay, the professor said I can go. Sorry, you guys.
Okay.
It looks like she's gonna be a little bit longer. Okay. My camera's off. Okay. I could use this. Let us all have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fellowship of the Spirit Tuesday night, Step 11 speaker series. My name is Teresa. I'm an alcoholic. Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither imposes nor causes any, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Is it in the chat, Mickey or Kuna? Okay.
Mickey, you can unmute.
We have asked Diane D to come on up and read the spiritual experience for us on page 567 of the Big Book.
Thank you. Diane, alcoholic, spiritual experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or a belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Herbert Spencer. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. The intention of this workshop series is to inspire all of us to cultivate a deeper relationship with the power within ourselves. The format of this meeting is that the speaker will share the topic on step 11 from the Big Book, or the 12 and 12 for 40 minutes. Then we will have 40 minutes of Q&A where you may ask questions and or briefly comment. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Our speaker has chosen, I think this is the correct one, what we could pack into the stream of life, page 86, and now Ali will come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, I was sort of contemplating on how to introduce her. The last 14, 15 months that we've been blessed to sort of partake in this meeting, sometimes people send us speakers to listen to, right? And I always listen, and Teresa listens, and I contemplate, and I sit with it for a few days. I guess some of you understand this. I heard one podcast from Kurt, and I had one phone conversation with him. And right then and there, I recognized him. I recognized that walk. It's a beautiful walk. Ooh, it's a beautiful walk. And how it looks like it's a deep spirit of love and service. So I can't wait to hear him. Come on up, brother.
There we go. Hey, Ali. Yeah, that's, yeah, I enjoyed our conversation. I felt the same way. You know, there's a connection. Don C., who's a very close friend of mine, calls that connection Tashnia. Two people connect. It's like a connection between the eyes. And we didn't get to see each other, but I could feel it in your spirit when we were talking. So when you asked for me to come up with a phrase, you know, I thought of this phrase because I think it's kind of the spirit of this whole meeting. You know, what can we pack into the stream of life? So let me give you a little rundown on my take on that. Based on my reflections on the 10th and 11th step in doing this. And what I was doing one night was I was on the website of Stepping Stones, and I was reading something on Bill W. And I was reading the nightly review, and I was like, where the hell did he come up with that phrase? The stream of life. Where did he come up with that? So I looked it up, and I Googled it, and I saw Rabindranath Tagore. It came up, who was he was a poet, Indian poet, British descent, and he won the Nobel Prize in 1913 for I think it was, well, whatever it was, Nobel Prize. And there was a poem he wrote, and it was called The Stream of Life. And I thought, that's really interesting. And then I went on that same website of Stepping Stones, and there was a list, a manifest of all the books that Bill had on his shelf. And guess which one was on the shelf? Tagore. And you know, if you've read anything about Bill and how he liked to steal stuff from other literature, he took a lot from the Big Book. He took it from varieties of religious experience, the Great Fact, vicissitudes. There's a lot of language that he used. So I want to read it. This is called The Stream of Life by Rabindranath Tagore. The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day, runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocketed in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and in flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by this touch of this world of life. And my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood at this moment. And he gave me some context of what they were asking. So how do we start this thing? This is an 11-step series, and I was brought up that these steps are in order. There's Don says, he said, you fulfill the condition, you get a spiritual cookie. You fulfill the condition in the first step, you get a spiritual cookie. You come to believe. You come to believe, and then there's only one thing to do with it, is make a decision and turn your will and life over to it. When you do that, then the first thing you got to recognize is how you manage and control your life through fear and self-propulsion, which is the inventory process. And then you share that with somebody. And they point out things you can't see because you can't see your own stuff. Then you take that stuff that you recognize and acknowledge, you take it into 6 and 7. Then you come to a place in an 8 where you become willing to make amends to them all, keyword all. And I say that simply because there's a great importance in that. There was for me. And it was kind of like, well, I'm willing to come to AA, but I'm going to drink beer. I wasn't all in. So, and then, you go and make amends. You make reparation for the damage you've done in people's lives. You have a new insight into what that is. And what happens in the whole process of this thing is something starts to wake up in you or in me that I didn't know was in me. Diane read it. She said, this unsuspected inner resource. I can tell it to you like this, in the way the Big Book talks about it, it says faith's been involved all along, right? It says there was this faith in the ability to think, my God of reason. I had immense faith in this mental narrative, drunk and sober, in AA and out of AA. And that mental narrative, the only thing it could produce was anxiety. So I like to say, thank God I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. Because most of the problems I had were in between my ears, behind my eyes, and I was driven by that condition. And I've recognized that condition today as the bondage of self. It is not me, it's not an entity, it's an activity. And so what happened when I started making amends, this awareness that she talked about, this awareness that is the essence of a spiritual experience, this awareness, intuitive thought, sixth sense, vital thing that they talk about in the book, started to wake up. And it's kind of hard to talk about 11 without 10. I mean, so what they said basically when I was reading this was they were saying something very descriptive to me. At this point, it changed from instructive to descriptive. And they said, you've entered the world of the spirit. And this world of the spirit they're talking about is very similar to what Bill said when he was talking to, what's his name? Dowling. When he was talking to Dowling about this experience he had in Winchester Cathedral. He had this revelatory experience in Winchester Cathedral. And at the time, he didn't know what that was. And like the book says, fleeting and soon lost, because he got off into the rest of the stuff. But later on, he had that same experience, it's only a little more powerful, in a hospital. And that experience was, it was an internal revelatory experience where the veil parted. where he was able to see what he had always tried to believe in but couldn't believe in. So it became a reality. And this is the whole point. This is the whole point. You know, if I live in my head, it's going to produce one thing. It cannot access that higher level of reality. And so we couple it with, you know, what the book says, self-searching, leveling our pride, doing these inventories, doing fifth steps, prayer, meditation, helping other people, going to meetings, interconnecting, having conversations about this. And what happens is, like anything, when you exercise it, it grows. And, so let me just give you an idea of kind of what I'm talking about, the way the book's talking about it. So it said, I never could do this. I had 19 years sobriety, drank. I came in, my first meeting was in 1979. I was sent here by the courts in Texas because they thought I had a drinking problem. And I got sober, I worked the steps, I did all the things you guys said. I got all the things that AA gives us, a wife, a home, a business, all the outside stuff. And all the outside stuff took me away from the inside stuff. And I drank at 19 years. And I couldn't get released. And I'd had one of those revelatory experiences in 1986 where I realized, oh my gosh, for 6 years I was in AA, I couldn't quit drinking. And then all of a sudden I saw that I couldn't quit drinking, like at a really deep level. I kept trying to quit drinking. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize I couldn't. So I had this experience and it released me in 1986. And I was sober 19 years, drank, and I couldn't get released. I was sent to treatment centers. I was put in 5150s. I completely wrecked everything that was built. And couldn't get released. And then got released. And for lack of a better word, you know, the same thing happened. I think everybody has these revelatory experiences. I just don't think we cultivate them. I think they're part of the human condition. So what happened when I had this other experience was like I got plugged into a light socket for 30 days. The obsession was relieved, and something happened that was really unusual. I had an immense clarity to see the problem from the solution. I wasn't looking at the problem for the problem. And, you know, you can believe this or not, I don't have that luxury. I was there. And so what I did was, that was 11 years ago. What I did was, since that time, I've tried to cultivate this experience, just like the book said, but I'd never heard it. It says what we really have, emphasis on really, is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Well, what's that? That's this awakened state. And what's the best way to maintain it is to be this spiritual condition. It's like this thing, the way it happened for me was I started reading just a book. And one night I read, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. I could never do that before. I always destructively reviewed my day. And what was obvious to me this time was the reason I was destructively reviewing my day was because I was seeing it through the lens of guilt and shame, not clarity. So it was always like fault. It was always through that lens of guilt and shame rather than a mistake, which is a normal human condition. So it said we were resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. Do we owe an apology? So basically, they're asking me questions that I've already gone through, right? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person? Were we kind and loving to all? What could we do better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking what we could do for others or what we could pack into the stream of life? And I was like, whoa, that's really, really similar to what that Tagore was saying when he was describing this poem. But we must be careful. We must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, which is that condition of self. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness. Now, this is the way I saw it. I didn't see it as I asked God to forgive me. That's not what it said. It said, we ask God's forgiveness. Well, my experience with God's forgiveness was the revelatory experience I had that released me. It was like that experience of grace, unconditional love. And what happened out of that experience was the ability to see I was never judged. I was the one doing the judging. And so this is what I'm asking for now. I'm asking for this to be in this place, this present state condition where this is my natural state. I used to think selfishness was my natural state. It's not. I don't buy that. My spiritual malady has to do with the seeming separation of me from that spirit. That seeming separation wasn't a spiritual dilemma. It was a mental narrative that told me I was screwed up spiritually. It's just the way I see it. There's nothing wrong with any of us. And most of us know that there is this connection, this grace, this forgiveness. Most of us know that because that's why I was drinking in the first place. I was trying to connect. See? And this was Jung's way of articulating it. He said, we use this. See, that was my medicine. Boy, you give me a little cold gray goose in a glass. Oh, okay, I can deal with the bills. I can deal with work. I can deal with whatever. That was that synthetic false connection. So what I realized was that was all I was ever looking for, ever, in whatever way it manifested. So this book took on a different type of meaning. Then it went into, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours a day. You know, there's like 15 times it mentions thinking or thought in this, right? In just a couple paragraphs. We consider our plans for the day. I said this to Koyas one time. He said, what do you think that means? And he said, I said, well, you know, I write a list of everything I'm going to do today. He goes, that's not what it means. I said, well, what do you mean that's not what it means? He said, your plans for the day, Kurt, are the corrective measures of how you're going to be today, not what you're going to do. When that being is right, then that action that comes out of it's a different action. It's a different way of doing things. It's more intuitive. It's more responsive. It's not reactive. It has more of a flow to it. So I never looked at it like that. I never looked at, oh, this is what they talked about in the fear inventory. It says, you know, we commenced to outgrow fear. Direct my attention to what you'd have me be. So the analogy I use with this is this. I say, if you imagined a bucket of water, and the bucket of water was super dirty, and you stuck your hand in it, and your intellect said, you need to clear the water by circling your hand in a clockwise position. And you did that. And you pulled your hand out, and you realized the water's still dirty. So plan B would be put your hand in and circle it in a counterclockwise position. You pull your hand out, the water's still dirty. Plan C would be put your hand in there and go vertically horizontal. Pull your hand out, the water's still dirty. So if you pause, like they say later in the 11th step, and you ask for an intuitive thought or action, it's like this with that water. All of a sudden you stop putting your hand in the water. You don't do something, you don't do something. And what happens naturally is the water starts to clear. And when the water starts to clear, you can see exactly what was causing the cloudiness in the pail at the bottom of the bucket. This would be a metaphor for that. This is the, see, sometimes I think I was in my own way. You know, James talks about it in Varieties of Religious Experience. He says, sometimes we try to think of a phone number or a person's name, and the harder we try and think, the more we block the ability to get to that phone number or that thought process, that memory that has it. And as soon as we turn away from it, it seems to come forth of its own accord. See, this is all we can do is point at what they're talking about here. We can't talk about this. This is experiential. So I really like that, because it was like, we consider our plans. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, asking it to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. And this is just my take on this, you know, take it or leave it. This is that mental narrative that produces anxiety. We call it fear. It's faith in a thought system of what's not happening. That's what it is. Self-pity is the past. Dishonest is the present. I cannot see with clarity. I see through a lens of self, conditioning, a narrative, trauma, old ideas, belief systems, that. Or self-seeking, which is the future. Under these conditions, I'm asking to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So what I'm really asking is what the book says in chapter 5. I'm asking for presence, to be present, to be here. In the book it says, in the how it works, it says, may you find him now. Not in the past, not in the future, not with a mental narrative overlaying it, but with some clarity here, right now. Under this condition, it says, under this condition, I can employ my mental faculties for assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a higher plane. That's what I'm talking about. This awareness is the essence of a spiritual experience. Or more religious members call it God consciousness. Vital sixth sense. This is what we're talking about. Mental faculties, right? Language, you know, creativity. I mean, there's a number of them. I mean, you have to just kind of fiddle through and see what you got. Our thought life will be placed on a higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. I don't like the word wrong, because it's a dualistic word that, you know, really gets, it's like kind of off track, right? In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. It doesn't say about going into the day, it says about thinking, indecision. We ask God for an inspiration into a thought. We relax, we take it easy. See, my problem was I couldn't relax because I had this narrative running all the time in my head. And I thought the narrative was me. It is not. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. What used to be a hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced, having just made contact, It says you might pay this presumption. You will pay this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions. Right? I mean, we conclude the period of meditation. So the meditation. There's lots of meditations. There's there's so many modalities. There's so many different ways of meditating. And all those meditations are to bring you to a meditative state. And the meditative state, I think, is conscious awareness. It is presence. It's a state of well-being. And that, everybody works that in their own way. There's, people, in the last 6 months, I've heard a lot about two-way prayer. I have no experience with it. There's contemplative meditations, there's centering prayer, there's vipassana, there's all kinds. I like what Bill said. He didn't say anything about it. He said everybody finds their own thing. My thing is to go sit at the beach. I go down to the beach, I sit on a wall. It's not very attractive, it doesn't sound very deep and spiritual, but it works for me. I look at the ocean. I listen to the Mother Nature. I come in my office. I like to read books. I like to listen to spiritual people who are talking from that language of the heart. And I have an ear for that because I've developed it. It's not a narrative that's based in fear and self-propulsion. And so there's another part that talks about, how much time do we have, Ali?
Another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. This was an exercise I got from Don. He said, well, a couple of them. He said, look, for a week, you can't ask why. I was like, well, why? And he said, you have to, every time you want to ask why, you have to ask next. What's the next indicated step? Not the why. And that was 11-step exercise. I never saw it in the book, but then I saw it in the book after I did it. And then another thing he had me do was he said, I want you to pause when agitated or doubtful. I want you to do that for a week. And of course, I did what he said, and I came back to him a week later. I said, totally failed the exercise. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I failed the exercise. He said, what are you talking about? I said, you told me to pause. I said, I paused. During the week, I didn't get a thing done because I was busy pausing all the time, because every time I was agitated or doubtful, I paused. And he goes, you dummy, that's not why I asked you to do it. He goes, what I was trying to get you to see is every time you get agitated or doubtful, you're moving into this condition, this condition of self. And he said, when you pause, you interrupt that energy. He said, it's like a street. It's got curbs on it. He said, you're driving down the middle of the street. When you bump the curb, you make an adjustment, a corrective measure to get back in the street. I was like, okay, I got it. It's not a fault-based thing. See, I was processing it through failure, success, guilt, shame, duality. It's like, this is the way it is. So the other story that he gave me, well, he didn't give it to me, I stole it, was a story he told about Johnny Looking-Cloud when he was having some trouble at 4 or 5 years sober. And he went up to Johnny Looking-Cloud, and Johnny Looking-Cloud took him outside because he was having trouble with 6 and 7. And he took him outside. He took a cane that he used, and he drew this line in the sand out in front of his house. And he told Koyas to get on this line. And he said, I want you to walk that line. And as Don started walking on the line, Johnny Looking-Cloud came around to the right side of him and pushed him off the line. And Koyas said, what'd you do that for? He said, just get back on the line. So he got back on the line, he started walking a little more, and Johnny Looking-Cloud came around to the left and pushed him off to the left. And he said, by the time I got to the end of the line, I was really pissed off because this guy pushed me off the line like 5 or 6 times and didn't tell me why. He said, and then Johnny Looking-Cloud said something to him. He said, I want you to turn around and look at the line. And he turned around and he looked, he said, Johnny Looking-Cloud said to Don, you think the path is that line. It's not. The path, he put his hands out like this, he said, is that line and the steps off of it, back onto it, off of it, back onto it. And it clicked for me. I said, oh, constructively review my day. This is how I'm going to build by seeing my mistakes. And they are simply mistakes. There's no guilt or shame attached to them. And if there is, there's probably an amends that needs to be made somewhere back, wherever. That's an indicator. It's like that guilt's supposed to be there. I did wrong, guilt. I am wrong, shame. That's a delusion. That narrative is coming from the condition of self, a belief system. It's not true. So this was how he kind of shaped the way I understood this nightly, morning kind of exercise, right? As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. We ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. You know, a friend of mine said this the other day. He said, you know, the whole point of this is, in the third step, is being convinced, right? Like if you want to pray for something, pray for being convinced. He said, and then at some point, it has to grow into staying convinced. Like not going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So how we do that, or how I do that, is on a daily basis. What I really have is that. So it says, running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times this day, thy will be done. At some point for me, that changed. Because it sounded like thy will be done needs to happen. What changed about it was thy will is being done. It's happening. This, whatever you want to call it, in my eyes and understanding, we are all an expression of this will. In a traditional way, they'd say the four-legged, the two-legged, the winged ones, the fish, everything is a manifestation of that will. We're all relatives. There's no exclusivity, it's inclusivity. We're all brothers and sisters. The Sweat Lodge, they say the Stone Brothers. They welcome the Stone Brothers into the Sweat Lodge. I used to wonder, what the hell are they talking about? They recognize this is an expression of that will. There's a lot of different modalities of the way this is expressed in because it says be quick to see where religious people are right, not that they're right. Be quick to see where. And at this point, some discernment starts to be obvious. Because you're not seeing with your head, you're seeing with this other sense. And I mean, this is a tremendous realization. It's a tremendous gift. It's a tremendous thing for me to be a part of all you guys talking about this. And this is what I think is really what happens. This is the theme. What can we pack into the stream of life? It ain't out there. It's in here. It's like this is what I think it's about. So I think with that, I think all the air is out of the balloon here. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks, you guys. You need to go where somebody doesn't know you. So I went to a meeting And my take on this was, I don't want to go to that meeting because they don't work the steps up there. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, of course, I'm drinking, right? And so I went to that meeting, and a little guy followed me outside because I was complaining about my wife divorcing me. And he followed me out to the car, and he said to me, listen, can I make a suggestion? And I said, well, sure, you know, kind of cocky. He was an 80-year-old man, little short guy. He said, I saw you raise your hand as a newcomer. I said, well, yeah, I was drunk yesterday. He said, well, I know that. You're an alcoholic. That caught my attention. He said, can I make a suggestion? I said, yeah. And he said, quit raising your hand as a newcomer. He said, you're not a newcomer. You've been around here 20 years. He said, we didn't design that for this. And here was the key, he said. He said, every time you raise your hand as a newcomer, you put more guilt and remorse on the condition you're trying to extinguish. Stop it. And there was that resonance of truth. I heard it. And so I continued to drink for another 3 weeks, and I complained about my wife leaving again in the meeting. And he followed me back out to the truck again. And he said, can I make another suggestion? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was listening to him because of what he said before. But I did quit raising my hand as a newcomer. He said, can I write a prayer for you to say? He said, I guarantee it'll work. And my comment to him was, good, because the, you know, 4-letter word she needs to change, right? I thought, you know, if I say the prayer, she'll change. So he wrote a prayer for me. And the prayer was, God, please give Rhonda the very best that life has to offer. Please give her health, happiness, and prosperity. And please give her a peace and understanding she's never experienced. That was the prayer. And he said, I guarantee if you say this prayer, it'll work. So I said that prayer for 3 months. And basically what happened was, when my kids left and my ex-wife left and they went up to the mountains to their grandparents on Christmas, I was in the house alone. And basically what happened was that prayer happened to me. And I knew exactly what had happened. I knew exactly what I was experiencing. And I texted 3 people. Don Coyce was one, Brett Bozeman was another, Bill Cleveland was another. And Brett said to me, where are you? You're back. And I called Ted Jenkins, the guy that gave me the prayer. And I was kind of teary-eyed when I called him, and I said, something's happened to me. He started crying on the phone. He said, I know. And I said, can I ask you another question? And he said, yeah, you can. And I said, did you know this was going to happen to me? He cried a little more, and he said, I did. And I said, can I ask you one more question? And he said, you can. And I said, did you know you couldn't tell me that when you gave me the prayer? And he cried a little more, and he said, I did. And I don't know, I just think those kind of people are few and far between. You know, when we run into them in these rooms, that's a miracle. So that's about...
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Amazing. Turning Point, you don't have a video, but I'll give you a chance. Come on up, please.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn. I'm an addict alcoholic. I'm sorry about the no video thing. I didn't even think about that as a part of your protocol. But Kurt, I just wanted to thank you so much for bringing so much understanding to a lot of the steps. I actually took a lot of notes during this, and you just gave me a lot of hope for, you know, the coming steps that I have to take in this program, and I really, really, really appreciated it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim W., come on up, brother, please.
Hi guys, I'm an alcoholic and my name is Jim, and well, this is enough to make your brain explode. Thank you very much. A lot of stuff to think about. Now, I got so wrapped up in that analogy about the pail and the water, I lost track of what you were reading in step 11 it was an analogy for. Could you repeat that, please?
Well, it was kind of an analogy for that. I probably didn't get to it, but it's that, you know, at the very end of 11, it says, faith without works is dead, right? So I always add to that. Faith without works is dead, right? But works without faith is just self-propulsion. See, I needed some intuitive sense. People in Al-Anon realize this a lot. There's a thing, you know, if I rob you from your pain, you have to start over again from the very beginning. See, things like that. Like what we think we're doing and what we're doing sometimes isn't what we're doing. So I think I was using that analogy as like the bucket is like, I thought I was clearing the water by putting my hand in. Just like I thought I was, you know, I had no idea I was trying to control and enjoy my drinking, even by not going to the liquor store. These were all forms of control. I didn't realize none of this was going to work. Does that make sense? That makes sense, Jim? No?
Yeah, no, I think I get it a little bit better. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of things that I think I guess that I think I'm doing, I think I'm accomplishing. I don't know that really almost like the reverse is happening.
Thank you, Jim, for your question.
Yeah.
Sorry, but were you gonna say something else, Kurt?
Well, you know, I think as a writing Bill did, they said, you know, our good can be an enemy for the best. You know what I mean? Like there was more involved here. Koya said it to me when I drank, you know. He said, were you serious when you took the third step in 1986? I said, sure I was. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something. You're not going to understand it. He said, all this drinking and all this madness is all part of that third step.
Thank you very much. Alex P., come on up, please.
Thank you so much, Ali, for your service. Thank you so much, Kurt. Alex P., recovered alcoholic. Kurt, you know, I didn't expect to ask you this, but so just to give you, you know, level set here, give you some context. Been in the program a couple of years. I sponsor, my sponsee sponsor. You know, I'm an alternate GSR. Very much what I'm getting at is I'm involved in service. I do my night routine. I do my 10th step, 11th step. But what I'm noticing is as I climb the ranks professionally, because, you know, who would imagine that showing up every day and working your butt off and practicing this stuff does equate to success. But what I'm noticing is you know, I'm in sales, I'm in tech sales, and it's very dog eat dog, and you know, it's weighing on me, and I'm going on to wanting to go to a different employer. And long story short, I'm noticing a trend where it's like if you start going everywhere and you smell that same smell and you don't like that smell, check your own shoes. You know, any advice within your own experience throughout your own sobriety, maybe early on or just at any point, did you come to a terms with learning how to balance the program and your professional life? If that's not applicable, you know, no worries. I don't want to hold this hostage, but nonetheless, thank you.
Yeah, it's very applicable. It better be, right? So I had a plumbing business for 35 years. And as the case would have it, I have emphysema, 47% lung capacity. And I could not do that job anymore. And in fact, after I had that experience 11 years ago, I knew that I could not chase the money anymore. I knew that wasn't it. I'd already done that. So this is like, this whole thing is negation, right? We know what not to do. And about 3 months after, well, it was about a year, I went out to the plumbing truck and I was going to do a job, and I'd had neck surgery, and I went out, the Plymouth truck was gone. Somebody stole it. And I stood in the parking lot where that truck was missing. And I looked up at the sky and I just said, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. This is God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I get it. And what happened was I said simply this: I got it. I understand what's happening here, but I don't know what to do. This is all I've ever done my whole life. And that led to a series of events where I went to clients that I had for a long time who were people I respected, lawyers, doctors, physicists. And I asked them, what do you see in me that I don't see? They all came back with the same thing. And it's what led me into my present employment today, which is, it's a service-based industry. And you would have never I could have never told you that that's where I was going to end up. But I followed what Koya said to me. He said, you ask the universe or God or whatever you talk about, you ask, and he said, you're going to ask, and it's going to be like you're standing in a dark hallway, and there's no doors. And he said, all of a sudden, a door will appear, and only you can see the door. You have to have enough faith to walk and open that door. And he said, this is what it's like. And that's what I did. So I totally get that. You're in a transition, you know? Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you, Alex, for your question. Nikki, come on up, brother. Sorry, man, I muted you, man.
Thank you, Ollie. Mickey Alcoholic. Kurt, I gotta say, man, you blew me away. I'm so grateful that this whole share is recorded. I'm going to look forward to downloading it and listening to this over and over again. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'm probably going to mangle what I thought I heard you say, but I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. If you can share some examples of this particular part of your share. You had mentioned something about look at it from the side of the solution, and that experientially you're used to looking at it from the problem instead of the solution. And I may have mangled that, and I apologize if I did. And but can you give us a couple of examples of how you did that, or how you change the narrative that way?
Well, I didn't change the narrative. The narrative that was part of that experience of starting to see things differently. It says, that's what the awakening is, right? We have a different perception of the same environment, right? Your view starts to shift. So one of the guys, there's a part in the book, and this is when language was put to it. It says, being convinced that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us. We're the us. I'm not my thinking. This narrative is not me. It's conditioning, belief systems, old ideas, trauma. It's everything. It's like, and that narrative defined reality. And then there was an awareness that reality was an illusion. That wasn't what was happening. The way Koya said it to me was, he said a thing, nothing has any meaning except for the meaning you give to it. That's consciously and unconsciously. I thought that was stupid when he said it to me. I just thought it was stupid. Like, what's that mean? But the narrative was making that statement. The conditioning, that condition, that activity, not entity, that's not who we are. We're, Koya's, not Koya's, I hate to drop Don in here. Don Pritt said this one time. He talks about a story about Michelangelo and David, right? It was a story he used a lot. And he used to say, somebody asked Michelangelo, how did you get David out of that piece of marble? And his answer was, I chipped away everything that wasn't David. He was in the marble. That's what we do here. We discover the obstacles in our path. We discover old belief systems. We see things that we're not. We do it in inventory. We see the truth about the lie. We're not writing about who we are. We're writing about who we've become based on that narrative, that condition of self. That's not who you are. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. And that spirit's never been messed up. You got a mental narrative that tells you you're messed up. That makes sense?
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Kurt. Samantha, come on up, please.
Hi there, Kurt. Thank you so much for your talk. And that was a great question from Mickey, but I have one that's a little more textbook. And that is, you mentioned some podcasts that you listen to. I was wondering if you could elaborate on what you listen to. We get lots of people who share what books they draw from, but I've never heard anyone mention podcasts.
Well, I would say mostly YouTube, but the same from books. So I would say I could just name some of the main people. So now most of my people are non-dual people, like Rupert Spira, Adyashanti, a guy named Paul Hederman, who's one of us, Thomas Merton, Ravi Shankar, Ravi Ravindra, Krishnamurti, William James, I think he was a mystic, Rumi, Shams Tabriz, his teacher. I mean, there's some great Hafiz, there's some great poets that were like, I mean, I just think we've gotten so far away from this Cartesian Newtonian perspective for the last 300 years. We just forgot this thing that's in us. It's in us. It's just atrophied. And that's what I didn't know. The book said it. This great reality is deep down within you. I mean, all the wisdom teachers said it. All the prophets said it. I mean, that's what's so great about when it says, be quick to see where religious people are right. Not that they're right. Where they're right. You start reading this stuff and you go, oh, they say that in the big book. Oh, they say that in the big book, right? You start to hear this. It's on my door, I said, committed to the different dialects of one language. That's underneath my name at the business. Two Trees Insight Guidance. It says, committed to the wisdom traditions of many dialects of one language. In AA, we call it the language of the heart. These are all different modalities of perception, from based on culture and time when they were written. They're all pointing to the same thing. I said this today to a guy. I said, there's an old story about, you know, everybody's going up the mountain, right? And everybody's on these different paths going up the mountain. And the only ones that argue about the paths are the guys that are on the paths. If you're on the wrong path, you need to come over to my path. This guy's, no, you're on the wrong path. So, but the people that got to the top of the mountain, they're not arguing about which path gets you there because they see all of them take you to the top of the mountain.
Thank you, Samantha. Penny Claire, come on up. Good to see you.
Hi, Ali. Thank you. Hi, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Penny Claire. Thank you, Kurt. I'm just trying to get your picture to come up. I've met you at the emotional sobriety meeting, and I love what you have to share. I'm really aware of the narrative in my mind, and it's really, really strong. And like this morning, I just had this, I felt so clear. My mind told me that I could tell that I was creating my own problem. And there's a part of my mind, I would call it madness, always wants to tell me where I'm wrong and how I'm doing it wrong. And I continually to be on this wheel to fix things and make things better. And I have this person in my life that says, you know, bring your lawyer. It's actually my son. He goes, bring your lawyer, mother. And he said, bring your disbarred lawyer. I realized this problem in my head was only in my head and it wasn't even real. It's like a relationship I had with a sponsee. So all of a sudden it was just so clear. Just send her a love note. It's over. There's no freaking problem there. You're making it. But that feels like the narrative too. And and then the narrative says, you're never going to get out of this. You're so deep, such a deep analytical thinker. And so then when you say, like, do you go to the ocean every day and sit on the wall? Do you make disciplines for yourself? And I've got a really beautiful, active mind, but there's a lot of, I understand what you mean by the narrative, but I don't know if I've ever really experienced just being. I just don't know if that's even possible.
Well, yeah, I don't think you could see the narrative if that wasn't possible. You have an awareness of that narrative. This awareness is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. The very thing you're looking for, you're looking with. And there's a residual on this thing. There's a tail. And some people, that tail is longer than others because there's more trauma, there's more belief system, there's more anchored in this stuff. And I don't, I just know, I know what revealed itself when the veil parted was there's never been anything wrong with you. All you've been trying to do is connect to wholeness in the only way you knew how. And the realization of that was like the access to that forgiveness, grace, whatever. That is a present state condition. And that's not, the narrative is like we always say, if you got the narrative going in your head, just tell it, thanks for sharing next. Thanks for sharing next. You're not fighting, you cease fighting. Thanks for sharing next. You invite the next narrative because eventually people say problems die from neglect because they're not problems, they're mental narratives. They'll die from neglect because nobody's paying attention to it. I think it's why the Buddhists are always giggling. The little Buddhist guys are always giggling. I think that's why. I think, oh my gosh, can you imagine that thing talking? I mean, we hear it in sponsees, don't we? Oh my God, you just pay attention. You go, that's my narrative. How could it be my narrative if they're talking about it? It's a narrative that we all share. It's not my narrative. If we all got it.
Thank you, Penny Claire. Andrew, come on up, please.
Hey, Carl. Thank you for your sharing. I've been debating whether to ask this question because it's a bit off topic. I have to ask it though. It's to do with your drinking and your slip. When you started about drinking after 19 years of sobriety, did you start back where you left off 19 years earlier, or did you start off at a whole new level, which is why it was so difficult to come back?
Oh my God. Good. That's a great question. The book talks about it. And I didn't believe the book because I didn't have the experience. It says a guy drank after 25 years. And he was dead within 4 years. Well, I wouldn't have made it 4 years. I drank a glass of beer, four little glasses of beer, no thought, just it was there. And I thought, well, that wasn't so bad, and I left. Within a month, I was drinking a quart of vodka a day. And yeah, it was worse, way worse. It's like I never stopped drinking, which is this weird. I still think that is the weirdest thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you, brother. Michael, come on up, please.
Hi, Kurt. I'd like to share with us for a moment the experience you had, what went through your mind when you first saw the real world and realized your whole world, everything that you knew was a complete illusion, and your mind just explodes. What did you do to kind of start seeing the God in everybody else? If you're
yeah, well, you know what's interesting is, I had a narrative, or I had a story when I went out, and the story went like this: because I couldn't get released, you're going to die this way. You're going to be an example of alcoholism. You had your shot, you blew it. That was the narrative, all guilt and shame based. And then when that, for lack of a better word, that veil parted, the first thing that happened was I knew what was happening to me based on the experience I had in 1986. In 1986, I didn't talk about it. I was afraid to talk about it because I thought people thought I'd be crazy. So I did what Bill did. I read varieties of religious experience, and it gave proof and validity to the experience that I had. Then I would talk about it a little bit. Like in the book, it said, I lost my mind, like you said. Thank God. I needed to lose my mind because it's what was producing that I was a victim of a delusion that I could wrest satisfaction from management. But when that happened, I tried to understand it through the intellect. So I would say things like, I woke up. And the truth of the matter was, I didn't wake up. There was awakening. The I was the thing that dropped off. That's what was very clear. Because I look back, it was like a domino effect. It was like this. If I could take 5 minutes and tell this story. Is that okay, Ollie?
100%.
So the first time I wrote when I first got inventory, I wrote it on my dad. And the resentment was real simple. He wouldn't come see me in prison. Very simple. Now, it was very clear to see my part. We're talking about mechanics and surface level stuff. My part was I robbed the liquor store. I went to prison. I drank. I made a mess of things. But there was an intuitive part of me that said, you're not getting there. You're missing it. I didn't know what I was missing. See? Because I don't know what I don't know until I know it. And a thought came to me, and the thought was, what were you really up to? And on the back end of that thought, some clarity was there. And the clarity was, what I was really up to is I didn't care whether my dad came to see me in prison. What I wanted to know is who was on the visiting list, who was going to put money in my commissary, what was going on in the free world. It was like a domino effect from clarity. And immediately the resentment dropped because I realized, I saw the truth about the lie. I realized I wasn't mad at my dad. I had a hidden motive. But what happened on the end of that was profound. The realization that I'd never seen my father as my father at 28 years old. I had seen him as a pawn on my chessboard of life. I had never seen him as my dad, and it crushed me. And I don't mean it in a bad way, I mean in a really good way. Because for the first time, I had a relationship with my father. That's the kind of insight that inventory produces. So for the first time, I knew what I was really looking for now when I wrote inventory. Not that I could produce it, but that I could, like Bill said, I could till the black soil of hopelessness from which all spiritual growth will flow. See, I could participate in the process. I hope that answered it.
Thank you very much, Michael. Nick, please.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was kind of answered my question. I was thinking about that. There's a failure in our thought, and that where that you say past, present, and future, the self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking. That intuitive thought and decision. That's that. I get, and I suppose that was that clarity he was talking about. I think he just answered it, but yeah, that's the one I always have a difficult time with, is that paragraph there. But yeah, so anyways, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I think we all do. We all,
Thank you, Dave. Kurt, there's a couple of people asked in the chat, if you don't mind. Would you mind repeating that prayer that you were given for your wife? It was for aspect.
Yeah. So it said, let me grab it. It's right here.
All right. I'm pausing this here.
It says, God, give Rhonda the very best that life has to offer. Give her health, happiness, and prosperity, and a peace and serenity that she's never known before. And then I wrote underneath to pray every day. The guy says it works.
Beautiful. And it did work. Raul, come on up, please. Raul, going once. All right. Jim, looks like you're out one more time, brother.
All right, thanks. So when you were talking about the line that says we consider our plans for the day, it's tough trying. I'm gonna have to listen to this recording later on to go at each little part. But so was Bill trying to get at the idea that we consider our plans for the day instead of I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, which I guess might be a form of my will be done, that our plans for the day be thy will be done. Those are my plans for the day. If you could comment on that, please.
Well, I wouldn't even pretend to know what Bill meant by that. But what I can say is and I know this is a living system. This thing's a living thing. And we will, like, I read this at a certain degree, and then it got deeper and deeper and deeper. Like, we all read the big book and we go, wow, I didn't know it said that in there. All of a sudden it comes out. So I think as we do this, we get different levels of understanding of this thing based on wherever we are. I mean, that was profound when Koya said, they're not talking about your plans. They're talking about the plan is your corrective measure. Like, that was revelatory for me. I was like, oh, it makes sense now. It made sense. Oh, my corrective measures. So if let's just say I'm dismissive to Ali, and I see, okay, this is what I've seen. This is what I was doing in the nightly review. And I get up the next day and I say, I ask for a corrective measure. My plan for the day might be, what is the plan for the, how am I going to be? Am I going to be the opposite of dismissive? Am I going to be more awake and aware of other people? Am I going to be, it could be a number of things, right? So at first it was the opposite, because it's always that. I'm selfish, I want to be kind. But then there was another level of that was like, this is heads and tails of the same coin. This is just self-manifested in both ways. So it went a little deeper. So I think I think people, we have our own experience with reading it. I think the point was, for me, the real magic was to see thy will is being done. It's happening right now. It's a present state condition. Oh my gosh, that's profound. That's the only place I ever wanted to be. It's the only place I ever fit. Was here, without a narrative. This is why I was so angry for so many years. I always thought it was her, them, money, that, where it landed. The anger was coming from my complete separation from source, period. End of conversation. Where's source? Right here. My God, that you can rest there. You can experience serenity there. You can comprehend the words. You can know peace. You are in a position of neutrality. You are safe. You are protected. ... It's all a present state description of that state of awareness.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry about that, Kurt. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I get on a tangent there. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. You got these beautiful pauses. I just don't know if something's going to come again. So I would have... Louisa, come on up, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Louisa. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Kurt, for your message. I really related to what you shared because I went out at 16 and a half years. And I had the same narrative. My drinking, I could not escape the drinking at all. And it was like I had never stopped. So I wanted you to, I know you touched on it, but if you can speak a little bit about what your 11 years of sobriety is like now to what you were like when you were 19 years. Yeah, if you can touch a little bit, what's different or what other changes you've made. Thank you.
Well, it's night and day, I think. I mean, you'd have to ask the people around me, but I know, yeah, it's just a different way of relating to the world. It's totally different because the basis is different. I heard it said like this by a friend of mine who he hasn't been able to get in the program. He's been around 28, 30 years. He made a profound statement one time in a meeting. He said, when I try to fit AA into my life, it never worked. He said, but when I fit my life into AA, it always worked. Now, out of the mouths of babes, right? Here's a guy who couldn't stay sober. But while he was sober, he said this. And I think that's the deal. I mean, the part of that clarity was I had thought I did something wrong. And I say this a lot in different groups. First thing I say to new people, I want to get something across. You might not hear it now, but you might hear it later. You did absolutely nothing wrong by drinking and using. All you were trying to do was connect to wholeness, the only way you knew how. Anything else is a narrative about that. That's all you were trying to do was connect to wholeness. And you can't find fault in that. It's just the only way I knew what would connect me. Yeah. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Louisa. Kurt, we just got a couple of minutes left, brother. I was just wondering if you're inspired to share anything with us in closing before we close the meeting.
Could I read something out of a non-AA book?
Please.
It's just, I read this, probably Bobby Joe and Chris and all these, they probably get tired of me reading this. This is out of a book Mary T turned me on to. Surrender, the Sacred Art, Rami Shapiro. This is profound. This is great. When surrender is a tactic, It's just another means of control, another effort to impose your will on your disease. Surrender is beyond your power. If it weren't, you would have no need of a higher power. The genius of 12-step spirituality isn't that it teaches you to surrender, but that it exhausts you in the effort to surrender. So you last surrendering, and find yourself. I mean, that's how it works.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Teresa, come on up, please. Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kurt. Thank you, thank you, thank you.